Okay, good afternoon, members. Welcome to Cabinet. Today, Tuesday, 5th of April, 2022, and it's 3 p.m. Membership of the Cabinet. We've got 3 apologies. Well, I'll explain what the third apology is. The 3 apologies for members to attend the Cabinet. Councillor Will Simpson and Councillor Cathy Scott. We've also got apologies from Councillor Paul Davies, but he's actually joined us virtually. He will do his reports. He will answer questions if there are any questions, but because he's not here, he will not be able to vote. Hope that's clear. Item 2, minutes of previous meeting. Are they a current record? Thank you, members. Item 3, declaration of interest. If you have any interest, please complete the relevant form and hand them into the clerk, Yolanda, who's sitting next to me, or email them over if you can't do it in person. Item 4, admission of the public. We've got 1 member of the public. Welcome. Item 5, deputations and petitions. Is it Keith? Keith, I understand you've got a deputation and then also a petition which I've got up. So you've got 5 minutes. Over to you for your deputation. Thank you.
First of all, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here today on behalf of Mr. Mark Thorpe and the residents of Smallwood Road in Shawcross in Dewsbury to submit a petition for extra car parking space within this estate. The reason that Mr. Thorpe asked me to come along today is because he did actually send in the petition with a covering letter to Councillor Firth, who I see was here, and Karen Todd. I'm not sure who Karen Todd is, over 2 weeks ago, but didn't actually get a reply. Mr. Thorpe and other residents have expressed a concern there's not enough parking space for residents and visitors on this small estate. It's come to a point where neighbours are falling out about car parking space and cars parked on the pavement, which forces young mums to push their prams onto the road, which is obviously very dangerous. The ill feeling between neighbours has become so bad that yesterday the police had to be called. I hope this petition won't be ignored like the one I presented last October for a traffic control system at the junction of Barwell and Leeds Road in Hanging Eaton. Thank you.
Thank you. You want to say something?
May I respond to that, Chair? Yes. I did receive a petition from Mr. Thorpe by mail, and he sent it to Civic 3. It does take a long time when somebody writes to the council before an elected member gets it at home. I think it was about 10 days before it actually arrived. I dictated a letter last week to Council Support, telling that Mr. Thorpe that I would present this petition to colleagues at the first opportunity. Obviously, he's been a bit impatient and he sent it on to Mr. Mallinson. But I assure you, I have the petition that has been sent in, and he's got double for his money, if you like. But there you go. It's well in hand. Whether it will be successful, that will be down to K&H, because it's K&H property, not Kirklees. Thank you.
Yeah, just for clarification, there is no K&H now, Councillor Firth, as you know. It's now all council. But anyway, no problem. I've also got your petition here, which is excellent. I've read it and I've looked at it. And firstly, my apologies that you didn't have any response from our officers, but like Councillor Firth says, you are in good hands. And you've probably got a double whammy in terms of making sure that you do get the relevant departments to look into the issues concerned. And also, I'm really sorry to hear that the police have been called out recently. As councillors, we all know that last thing we want is our neighbours to fall out with each other, especially on something like car parking. And I'm sure many councils will understand that. When a lot of these estates were built, they weren't built for the number of cars we have. Because I do know that one of the things that we get raised time in, time out is people not being able to park near their houses, near their homes. And also we do get situations when people start getting a bit overexcited But please be assured, we will make sure that the officers do look into this thoroughly. You know, there will be a formal process that they'll go through. I'm sure your councillors will be supporting whatever they can in terms of making sure that you get the best solution. But once again, thank you for coming, and please be assured we will look into it fully, and thank you for your time, Keith. Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is questions by elected members. Is it question by... Oh, there is no members of the public, isn't there? Because of, questions by elected members. Councillor Bellamy, Donna, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Having issues with regards to HGVs coming off the motorway and going down Outlane, down New Way Road to get access down to Slathwaite. So they're going through Scapegoat Hill, Bolster Moor, etc., Wellhouse, on roads clearly that are unsuitable for HGVs, resulting in several getting stuck and 2 with only the last week, and 1 completely blocking a road off for above 8 hours. Can I request that a route and branch review of the signage in the area is done, and for it to include weight and length limits? Thank you.
Councillor Mather, do you want to respond to that? It's regarding the highways.
Thank you, Councillor Bellamy. And yes, I am aware of this particular issue, and we will look into signage, and there is no issue regarding putting up height restrictions. It makes sense and it's the right thing to do. We have had a review where some signage has to be renewed, and we will get on with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mather. Councillor Bellamy, are you okay with that response? Thank you. Any more questions by Councillor Adam Gregg? Adam, over to you.
Thank you, Councillor Pandar. Could I ask the leader of the council if he believes that there's ample car parking in Huddersfield Town Centre, and what are the council doing to mitigate their U-turn on the temporary car park on Queensgate, the old Queensgate site?
Is that your, again, car parking, or is it car parking? Yeah? Councillor, can I ask you to answer, because it's a deal question regarding is there enough space for car parking in Huddersfield Town Centre, and with all the temporary facilities, what's the plans?
Councillor Gray, I have answered this question before now. There is plenty of car parking in our town centre, in the immediate vicinity of where parking has been taken away. So all I can say is that's where it stands at the moment, and members of the public are signposted to all the parking facilities in the immediate town centre vicinity.
Thank you, Councillor Mather. You got a supplementary, Councillor Gray?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Panda. I'm absolutely astonished that Councillor Mather believes that the town centre has sufficient car parking. I have been in Huddersfield today and I've had a look around what facilities are on offer. I've actually been down to the Old Leeds Road car park. A couple of years ago in 2020, the council said that there would be 166 spaces at that car park. I counted only 79 that were available. So my question is, would the council be prepared to take some immediate action to bring the car park on Old Leeds Road up to the promised allocation? And the other 2 points, 2 suggestions really that I have for the council to consider are in relation to the displacement of on-street parking on Cloth Hall Street, where we've had planters and bollards put in place. I actually had a look at these today, and for quite a number of weeks now, probably going into months, we've had displaced bollards, scruffy planters. I know that was only going to be a temporary measure, and I would encourage the council to let us know what the plans are to address that, and if it is going to be temporary, to get some car parking back. And just finally, would the council consider consider the costs of putting a temporary car park into the Queensgate site? Because I understand it was about £230,000 for the old Leeds Road site. So I'm not sure what basis they're saying it's too expensive for a car park to be on Queensgate old site. Thank you.
Councillor Mather, do you want to answer that, particularly the situation regarding town centre parking? I don't know that they've taken car parking out, and I'm sure there's rationale there, and I think you got an email some time ago. So if you can also just clarify the situation regarding the position on in town centre car parks and car parking per se.
Okay. So, Councillor Gray, I will answer your three-pronged question. Is there sufficient car parking? Well, you know, we've been talking about a climate emergency. We're moving towards active travel. We are looking at our current town centre plans and what the town centre situation is going to look like in the future. So on that basis, I think at the moment we have sufficient car parking. In terms of bringing the Queensgate car park, is it 166 capacity down to 79 is what you have actually counted. I will have to get back to you whether we need to do anything about that. In relation to cost of a temporary car park, I have actually answered this before. It's not just about the cost, it's about how temporary it is and whether the public would be willing to allow us to use public monies on a temporary measure, regardless of the cost. The cost is substantial. So once again, if you want details, I will give you a written response, because it's difficult to be able to give you all the figures at this moment in time. But I can say, moving to the future, more active travel, using transport, walking in, using car parking facilities that is available. And as for the boxes and displacement of parking on Clothhorse Street, I don't think we're going to go there, because we've had extensive consultation. Members of the public have been kept aware of the developments of how we intend to use our town centre in the future, and which parking facility is going to be moved away in order to allow more people to walk safely through the town centre. And that's where I would like to leave it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mather. Councillor John Taylor, you've got a question?
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to change my question, because I just want to follow up a bit on what's just been said. Councillor Mather has twice now said she thinks there's adequate parking in the town centre. Do we have an evidence base for that? And if so, could that be shared more broadly with councillors? Because certainly what I pick up on the doorstep is that people are stopping travelling into Huddersfield because they find it difficult to find somewhere to park when they get in here. I hear the points about active travel and more use of public transport, but I represent a ward that's not well served by public transport. And it's a shame, unfortunately, that Will is unable to be with us with COVID. I wonder how long it would take Will to walk into Huddersfield from where he lives in Clayton West. So it isn't simply saying, well, we want to encourage more active travel and walking in, because quite a lot of residents don't have that opportunity to do that. So we have to make sure that we are providing adequate parking. So my ask is, what is your evidence base that tells you that you have adequate parking in Huddersfield Town Centre?
Councillor Mather?
Councillor Taylor, I can't give you the statistics sitting here, but I am prepared to provide evidential statistics that the economy portfolio holders and strategic directors have used to make these decisions. I hear what you're saying, that despite promoting public transport, we do have issues about accessibility. But I am still saying to you, as somebody who lives down the road, that there is sufficient car parking facilities. Nobody can park on the doorstep and walk in. We're expecting people to park in short or long stay car parks. There is abundant car parking facilities available. I will also write in and give you the evidence you have asked for. Thank you.
Thank you. And I don't think you can find out how long it takes Bill to walk down, but it will take a long time.
I will ask him, I will text him now and ask how long it will take. But he does ride a bicycle, so he can get
walking,
here.
not but that's cheating.
We just want walking. Okay, I'll check on that one.
Right, thank you. John, you got a supplementary? Councillor McBride, Peter?
I think what's got to be realised is in the next few years, the situation's going to change again and again because with significant and varying disruptions because of work that's being undertaken. At the moment, there's a lot of work going on Leeds Road, which is going to be disrupted for more than half a year. There's further work going to take place in the centre of town, all of which makes it very difficult to estimate what is an adequate provision at any given point in time. I do think that on balance, and bearing in mind there's been a reduction in demand, a quite significant one, that the needs, and I do go into the top car park, our biggest car park, regularly, daily, and I don't see that overpacked daily. It is not. I think there's an adequate car park. It's not ideal, I would accept that, but it is not going to be ideal over a long period of time because of the kind of disruption I've referred to. I'm not saying it's inevitable we can't do anything. I'm glad that you draw this to our attention, but at the same time, I think you've got to realise that there is a problem to be resolved, a changing problem and a changing situation.
Thank you, Councillor Peter McBride. Any more questions, Councillor Donna Bellamy?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Residents this week have just been in contact with me regarding their bin collections on New Street in Slathwaite. The bin wagon has to go through a small round sort of car park to get access to the bins. The residents have received letters this week saying that they need to present their bins somewhere else. However, guaranteed they haven't had a collection now for 4 weeks, so there obviously has been a problem, but before this there never was a problem, as the bin wagon used to turn up at about 7:30 in the morning, so regularly got access. The residents have contacted the council since the letter came out to the person that signed the letter and asked why this now all of a sudden is an issue and why is the wagon obviously coming later. To be told that the person signing the letter has no actual way of telling the drivers of when and how they should do their routes. It is down to the drivers. So could you answer, is that true? Do the drivers make their own routes and their own timings for bin collections?
Councillor Mather?
It's okay, thank you, Councillor Bellamy. I am somewhat concerned. I hadn't heard about this. I will check, I will look into it. And as for the drivers deciding on the route, my understanding is the routes have been decided, unless something unexpected happens, in which you are actually describing to me. It's not the route, it's not the done thing. There must be something happening. I will check and get you a written response.
Thank you, Councillor Mather. Any supplementary?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Something else that the residents were told when they phoned the council and phoned the person that had signed the letter was the person that signed the letter wasn't very happy because apparently he hadn't signed the letter. He knew nothing of the letter that had been sent out, so was rather concerned. So obviously that gives us concerns of the letters being sent out from the council with signatures on, and these people don't know.
Councillor Mather, do you know?
I wish, but I will check. It doesn't often happen, but if it has happened, we will look into it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mather. Councillor John Taylor. John?
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure who wants to answer this. It could be either Councillor Davis or Councillor McBride. But I want to come back to the Huddersfield blueprint. I asked at a recent Cabinet meeting, and I also asked at Economy and Neighbourhood Scrutiny questions around my concerns about the affordability of what we're proposing, and have asked several times now about what the administration's proposal is as we see significant increases in costs. I was talking to a representative of England Hockey yesterday, totally random, about something else, where he's attempting to get quotes for work to be done, where they'll only provide a quote with a guarantee of 3 weeks now because construction costs are rising so rapidly. So my question has been, and I've never really had it properly answered, is given that costs are rising, what is the proposal for the Huddersfield blueprint? Will they borrow more money to continue with the scope defined, or is the intention to stick with the same amount of funding and reduce the scope? Now, my reading of things with this latest U-turn on the car park on Queensgate is that probably it's a reduction in scope to save money. But I'd like to have some clarity on that point, please.
I'll bring Councillor Peter O'Brien first. Peter, and then if Councillor Paul Davies wants to chip in.
There is no intention to change the scope of activity for the blueprint. One accepts that because of the current situation and the economic problems it throws up, there will have to be adjustments. However, that's the main reason we employed experts to advise us and guide us, both on the technical side and on the financial side, of exactly how this should be handled. We were given, and in turn scrutiny was given, an account of the way in which this is being developed. And I can assure you that when there is a proposal to change estimates, although inflation is built into the estimates, one might presume because of this extraordinary increase currently that may have to be looked at again. But we are operating on the basis of what we know and what we will be informed, and what we've made sure we will be informed adequately at each stage, come what may. And again, I go back to the fact that's why we used expert advice from the outset. So I can't give you an immediate answer what exactly they might conclude. I think they will be reserving their position for the moment, and then they will come forward with ideas that might reflect the rather strange current situation, strange in the sense that they've been unknown for 30 years.
Thank you. Paul, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, well, very briefly, I think Councillor McBride has covered the key points. I think just to emphasise that certainly in terms of the current pressures and issues, not only us as a local authority, but every other local authority face, obviously, work is going on in terms of assessing that. And I think as Councillor McBride alluded to, so our finance team is working with the various directorates across the council, not just on the blueprint, but obviously, across all of our services, and ensuring that we understand what those challenges are, and that we're in a place to make decisions based on the best evidence. So that work is going on at the moment. That we are, as I say, from my understanding, we're in no different position. We're not in a different position to other local authorities. They are doing the same, and certainly I know that Eamon, for example, is in regular contact with his counterparts within the region and more widely. So yeah, that's all I could really add at this stage, Leader.
Thank you. Just to add to what's already been said, and you're quite right, John. the construction industry is actually 20% inflation. We've already seen that, and there's also danger that some evaluation that's taking place is it's also heating at the same time as well. If you see the amount of construction that's taking place since last 2 years, it is actually, you know, speeding up. We also see inflation getting higher and higher, and I suspect that, you know, by the end of the summer it'll be into double figures, and that's what some speculators are forecasting. And I think from a council point of view, that there's a number of things we need to take into account. First, the cost of living crisis, and what do we do or don't we do, and what is our role in that. There's also providing the basic services, which I'm sure we all will want to provide them basic public services, and at the same time realising our ambitions. And part of the ambitions is delivery of the not just the Huddersfield master plan, but also the blueprint and the plans that we've got in place. And there's also something else that we need to implement, which is really, really important to understand, which comes into effect on the 1st of April, is the new adult social care Precept and the stuff that's coming on the back of that. And again, all that's going to be unravelling as well. And one of the things I said at the last council meeting, I don't know if you were here, John, but Dubai celebrates 50 years of what happened in Dubai. Now, I'm not saying we're going to do the same sort of ambitions and deliver the same kind of things in Dubai, but that wasn't about bricks and mortar, that was about people. Because, you know, they've invested in the people, infrastructure, health services, and it's actually moved on a lot. You know, you didn't just have sand, you had sea where they actually put land and developed. So I think the evidence that I've seen so far, and again, this is only evidence based on the pandemic, that on the back of the pandemic, we were forecasted to actually go into a recession, a dip, a decline, and certainly in the West Yorkshire Combined Authority, we've actually booked that trend. So I'm not saying that everything's going to be fine, but I just want to see what the data shows and the evidence shows, and what that means, and that will be a decision that this council will have to make, I think. Because if we are going to be reshaping our plans, our capital or revenue plans, that will be something that will come back to this council, and quite rightly so, in terms of re-looking at our priorities. But as far as we are here and now, the situation is we have a budget, we have a plan. Although we are only agreeing year-on-year budgets, there's also a conversation to be had with government. For example, the LGA has already said that we cannot sustain a workforce based on 1 or 2% increases in our staffing costs, and already there's talks of 4, maybe 5 or 6%. Now, if that's something that the LGA takes a position on, that's going to have an impact on us, because we will have to then implement the cost of living in terms of whatever percentage points LGA agrees. So we are also looking at having conversation with the government to say, how do we actually sustain public services? When I say public services, I'm talking about the whole thing, you know, health and everything else. So yeah, there are big questions and there are big challenges ahead. But we have a plan at the moment, and we have to try our best to achieve them plans. But I hear what you're saying, John. You know, I just I'm very cautious about the challenges that we are facing as we move forward. Over to you, John.
Thank you, Shabir. I've listened intently to what all three of you have said, and thank you for your responses. No one actually answered the question that I asked. And to be fair, Shabir, you kind of took it outside of what I was really talking about. So I was being very, very specific and only talking about the Huddersfield Blueprint at the moment. I've got quite a lot of experience and background, both of working with consultants and working in programme management. And you don't ordinarily just have one proposal and one budget. And particularly where you are facing significant cost increases, you start to look at what the options are that you could do. My worry is at the moment, we set a budget, we baked within that budget some contingency for inflation, which we already know was inadequate now, for all the reasons that have been talked about here. And for me, every time I ask the question, I get the same answer. Actually, I don't get the same answer because I don't get a proper answer. And you can only do three things with a project. You can either increase the money you spend on it, increase the time it takes to deliver it, or change the scope of it. They're the three things that you can do. And all I keep asking is that very, very simple question, because I am worried if the answer turns out to be, we'll borrow more money. We're already talking about borrowing significant sums of money at a time when interest rates are rising. And you quite rightly say, Shabir, and you've talked about some of the other pressures that there are on the council's services. But if we start borrowing more money at a time when interest rates are rising, that puts additional pressures on the council's revenue budget, not its capital budget, it's its revenue budget. So we can't say, well, we're waiting for the consultants to have a look and come back with some views. You as the administration need to be making some decisions. My worry is what we'll end up with is one of two things. Either the project will end up being paused, a bit like Bradford was, where we had a hole in the middle of Bradford for a number of years, or you'll end up de-scoping so much of it that what's actually delivered doesn't really match your ambition and is a very pale version of it. And it's no good trying to kick the can down the road and look at these issues later. This is urgent, it needs addressing, it needs a response from this administration, and I keep asking the questions and don't get a response. So I'd like to know what this administration is doing to manage the impact on that huge programme of the significant increase in costs that we're already seeing. Thank you.
Thanks. Paul, have you got your hand up?
No.
Yeah.
I'll bring you in as well, but I've got Paul as well, yeah. I'll bring you up, Peter, don't worry. Paul, over to you.
Okay, let me just put my camera on. Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised at Councillor Taylor saying that he's not at the answer. I think I was fairly clear, and essentially I think I was saying fairly much what he was saying. Well, at this moment, not just at this moment, but certainly for the last few weeks since the crisis has worsened, obviously with Ukraine, we absolutely are looking at all of our budgets. We absolutely are looking at all of our programmes and projects, and that process is happening. We're not waiting for some far and distant date. But what Councillor Taylor is trying to force is a quick answer on something which needs very much in-depth analysis, a measured approach, albeit timely, so that we make the right decisions. So we're not going to be pushed into making quick and rash decisions when we've not got to the point where we believe we've had the adequate investigations and information available. So I think broadly, to be fair, I'm not that I'm trying to fall out with Councillor Taylor in any way. I think broadly we're in alignment, but Councillor Taylor's frustration is that we've not given a definitive answer as to what we're doing. And okay, fine, I can possibly understand that, but I'm quite surprised if he's managed major programmes. I've managed some very big programmes, both global and European-wise. And certainly what you don't do is rush into decisions which certainly could backfire and cause even more difficulties going forward. So please rest assured, we're not kicking anything down the road. We're not kicking any cans anywhere. We're approaching this in a very professional and measured way, and there will be the appropriate decisions made, and we'll be prepared as an administration to take accountability for those as well. And I'm sure we'll have further discussions, Councillor Taylor, about this, and I'm sure there'll be more than adequate opportunities to talk through details and listen to not just your views, but obviously other councillors' views.
Thank you, Councillor Paul Davis. Councillor Peter McBride.
Thank you, Shabir. I think Councillor Taylor's got to understand the way this has got to be handled is the way that all local authorities are facing situations where whatever their plans might be, they're going to have to be adjusted accordingly. And they will all rely on borrowing to a great deal, because that's the way capital schemes are afforded, by borrowing. All the schemes that you've seen previously, which is all the major regeneration in Huddersfield over 150 years, has been done by borrowing. It's been done. We have given so far detailed accounts of the way in which the money will be, the cost will be assessed, and how we'll get feedback about the way it's been adequately managed and guided from the consultants. The scheme overall of 200 million will be broken down bit by bit, and each in turn will be explained in detail and how at each stage the problem of inflation at any given point in time will be managed. That will be true of everything to do with the council, not just the £200 million investment in the centre of Huddersfield, the investment in Dewsbury. Every investment in Kirklees will be dealt with in that way. And in turn, this will be true of every investment across the whole of West Yorkshire and, in fact, across the whole of the country. Councillor Taylor wants a plan for every fine detail of what we are dealing with. Each bit of the plan will be brought forward and it will be costed with updates for inflation at any given point in time. Now, at the moment, all local authorities are facing exactly the same sort of problem. We'll have to adjust in the light of any reassessment that might have to be made. And I don't know, I am not the expert in this, nor is Councillor Taylor. We will take our time to assess what the situation will be, and we will not be panicking or told that it's something that can't be afforded. And so we don't know the facts. Councillor Taylor doesn't know the facts. He wants instant advice on situations. If you'd heard Rishi Sunak last week talking about, issues which were 1,000,000 times bigger than this, and just effectively saying, well, he hasn't got an answer at this stage because he cannot control the whole world situation of inflation. We face comparable situations, and the important thing at this stage is that we don't lose our heads, we do not panic, we take guidance and we assess accordingly and adjust if and where necessary. And that's what all local authorities are doing.
Thank you. Just to add to what's been already said, I've done a similar role to what you're talking about. I've been a programme director of big multi-million pound schemes in Greater Manchester, in Leeds, in Lincoln, working for a whole range of sectors. I trust our programme director, I trust the professionals to get on with the job they're doing. But I think the situation we actually in at the moment is quite unique, because we're just coming out of a pandemic. Suddenly inflation is going sky high, and at the same time, we've got a crisis that's unfolding in Europe, in Ukraine, and the variables that we would usually have and the planning that we usually have isn't the normal sort of planning. No one would have planned for what we're in now, and I'm just hoping that we're actually on a peak and hopefully we're starting to coming down, just in case something else comes up. Then, God help us. But in terms of the knowns, I do know that the borrowing that we are doing at the moment, and I'm sure Paul will correct me if I'm wrong, but our borrowing is actually quite low compared to the authorities. So if we do actually increase our borrowing, then I'd be quite relaxed about that. But I'm not getting any indication or any sort of like exception reporting that shit says anything but that we actually on plan, and we actually making a lot of headway with external investors. External investors are still interested in coming here and doing business. But as soon as we have any indication that things are going out of scope, out of plan, out of shape, the time's running away, the costs are escalating, and the quality is being undermined, because also we need to understand that quality cannot be compromised. Yeah, then that will be something that this council will have to make a decision on. But I share your concerns, John. I ask the same questions every day. But you've done similar jobs to I have, internal programme director. We trust them to get on with the job, and so far they've done some really fantastic work. And I'm hoping that we weather the storm as best we can. There's still a lot of headway in terms of flexibility, in terms of borrowing, and we just got to make sure that we evaluate every single step of the way and carry on with our ambitions. Anyway, we've run out of the 30 minutes. We've actually gone way over 30 minutes, but I think that was a good discussion to have. Councillor Firth, I don't usually allow over 30 minutes, but what is your...
No, Chair, it's just a point. Before Mr Malnister is ready to go, I've just checked my records, and Mr Thorpe was written to on the 31st.
Thank you for the clarification. Nahid, have you written to him as well?
I've got a response for Councillor Taylor. It will take to walk to Will's house 3 hours. To walk to your house, it would take 1 hour 40 minutes. But what I suggest is next time we put our walking boots on and go and walk to his house together.
I could have told you that. It takes about 3-4 hours. But thank you very much for your help anyway. Let's move on. And thank you for the questions, members. Item 7, Adult Services Capital Investment Programme, construction for Knoll Park House, Centre of Excellence, Councillor Musrat Khan. Muz, over to you.
Thank you, Councillor Panda. This report is seeking approval to increase the budget allocated for the new Dementia Day Care Centre and the Kirklees Living Well Centre. The existing daycare facilities no longer fit for the delivery of dementia services, and the proposed scheme will replace the existing building on site and provide the very best facilities for the day services for the future. The site will also provide a variety of support to enable people with a range of disabilities to continue to live in their homes independently for as long as possible. This will be also a contact point for information for carers and their support, and demonstration areas for new technology and internal building design that support people with disabilities. The detailed design and pre-tender estimate indicated that the anticipated cost of the scheme would exceed the original budget due to a combination of additional pressures such as increasing costs of construction materials, increased transport costs, an increase in the footprint of the building to ensure best design practice and incorporate learnings from COVID, and also unforeseen issues related to necessary groundworks have impacted on the original budget. Market conditions in the construction world remain volatile and difficult, which has resulted in the successful tender bid being higher than anticipated. This has meant the total budget has increased from 6.3 million to 8.21 million. This report seeks Cabinet approval to let the contract to the successful tenderer and deliver the scheme within the stated budget.
Thank you. Anyone wants to second that? Thank you, Councillor Kendrick. Any further questions and comments? No, thank you very much. It's really good that we've actually got a really good scheme in front of us. Again, the council's continued to... Oh, sorry, Viv, I thought you meant like... Sorry, my apologies. Over to you, Viv.
Thank you. I mean, I just really want to support this report. We've heard about the changes and the increasing building costs and materials and so on, and I did express my support for this programme when it first came to Cabinet. It is absolutely essential for our residents, our families where members have dementia. It is also absolutely essential, the Kirklees Living Well Centre. The one thing when someone is caring for someone with long-term illness or disability is not being able to have the time or the ability to know what other things are there to help and support them, and this centre will provide that. So, and it is about finding the additional money from the adult services budget, so I would heartily support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else I've forgotten? I'm just looking around. You've got multiple screens in front of you, so it's reflecting. Anyway, no, I think this is a really good report. It just shows that, you know, we will continue to invest where it's needed. In the report, I'm sure it said in the report that the building was built in 1963, so it's nearly 60 years old, the building. And to say that, you know, we're keeping that building and investing our money in for much needed services, show that, you know, we will continue to provide where we can for the most vulnerable in our society. So without further ado, can I just have a show of hands? Thank you very much, members. Next item is item 8, 2022-23 Council Capital Plan, proposed allocation of capital funding from the Director of Children's Achieve and Aspire Capital Maintenance baseline section of the Capital Plan. Councillor Paul Davis. You there, Paul?
Sorry, this wasn't for me. This.
Have I got the wrong one then? Let's have a quick look. I've been given some.
Yeah, this is. I haven't got item 8.
Right. Okay. This is item 8.
Yep.
It is item 8, Paul.
No. I'm item 9 and 10. I'm happy to. I'll do it if you like.
Yeah, it's Council Capital Plan allocation for capital funding for. Yeah. Do you want? Councillor Patterson, you know, yeah. Carol, go on, Carol, over to you. Sorry about that.
I thought it was Carol, yeah.
Thank you. This is just basically a technical report just to outline the final business case and the actual proposed schemes for routine repair and maintenance in schools. We've already approved the allocation is it £5 million in the capital plan at the beginning of the year, and this just gives you members the detail of where at the moment it is proposed that this scheme that this money will be spent. The report is also asking to give delegated approval to the Service Director for Learning and Services Early Support to amend the spending as necessary, depending on there's always some slippage in programmes, of course, and whether or not total costs for a particular scheme do come in differently to what we've been expecting, and also whether to allow a transfer of resources up to £2 million in any financial year. That just makes efficient use of this funding. So basically the report is just asking for approval of the business case as Appendix A, approval of the detailed list of works required at Appendix B, and approval to the delegation of powers as outlined in paragraphs 2.13, 2.15. Thank you.
Any questions? Councillor John Taylor.
Somebody second it first.
I was going to try to, but I keep being missed.
Sorry, I thought we'd take the questions first, and then we'll.
It was just a question really about whether, when we're looking at these type of programmes, whether we're thinking more broadly about where this could possibly help with the climate challenge. So, you know, there's things in here where we're doing things to roofs, and I'm wondering whether there was any opportunity, you know, where we're doing things to roofs, we're doing some electrical stuff, whether there's an opportunity to put solar panels in or that type of thing. I'm hoping that just is kind of part of a given in thinking, although there's nothing in here that says that. And the other one, and it's just one that I go on about all the time, which is electrical charging points, and whether there's any opportunity while we've got electricians at any of these sites, whether, you know, because again, it's setting an example to children and to parents, and, you know, if the teacher can take their electric car there and, you know, charge it whilst they're in school, just that opportunity really. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, my understanding of this is if you look at the schemes, they address urgent condition. So when you're talking about urgent condition, it's not improvement. But that's my understanding. And you know, because there are just so many schemes in there, like window replacement, rewiring, basic stuff. But I'll stand to be corrected, Carol.
No, you won't be corrected. I mean, that is what the scheme's about. But at 3.4, climate change and air quality, The condition schemes identified in this report will ensure that we are replacing inefficient roofs, boilers, heating and electrical systems with modern, energy-efficient materials and equipment that will contribute to the ever-reducing carbon footprint for the council. I won't go on, but yes, is the answer to Councillor Taylor's question.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll-Patterson. John, supplementary?
No, just electrical charging points, but that's just a wish, really.
Yeah.
It's always everybody's wish.
The question would be how many people would charge their car there. But anyway, Councillor Viff-Kendrick, you want to second that?
Yeah, I'm happy to second it, Chair. Like all ward councillors, my parochialism comes out and you look for schools in your own area, and I have to accept that, you know, the condition needs of these other schools is far greater, but I am comforted that fire safety works are for various schools, large condition works are for various schools, and physical adaptations for pupils and staff with disabilities are for various schools. But I very much second this report.
Thank you. So basically, the scheme there identified a total of £5 million for urgent condition. Are we all okay to approve that? Members, just show hands. Thank you. Move on to the next item, which is item 9, COVID-19 Additional Relief Fund. Paul, this is yours, yes?
It is indeed.
Okay,
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Leader. Yep, this report is seeking approval from the Council to establish the COVID-19 Additional Relief Fund business rates scheme in Kirklees. Please note it's for the financial year 2021 to 22, so this is retrospective. The COVID-19 Additional Rates Relief Fund, or to shorten it, CAF, is a government scheme which provides business rates relief for businesses impacted by COVID, but ineligible for existing government rate relief schemes which cover the retail, hospitality and leisure centres, including personal care businesses and Ofsted registered nurseries. The scheme is linked to government legislation which gained royal assent in December 2021, and it prevents businesses citing the pandemic as a material factor affecting the valuation of their premises for the purposes of business rates. So the rate relief scheme is intended to mitigate this, but as I said, importantly, it covers 2021 to 22 only at this point. There's certainly been no other announcements other than that. The council has been allocated 7.136 million for the scheme, and we've been given direction by the government to identify the sector's businesses that will be targeted for support. And the scheme is only available to those businesses registered for business rates. So the relief will be focused on small and medium-sized businesses rather than larger employers, as clearly those smaller and medium-sized businesses will likely to benefit more from the support. And the sectors that we're looking at will include the retail, hospitality, leisure, supply chain, events, exhibitions, travel, and also commercial car parks. Further, we're proposing to include businesses in the manufacturing, engineering sectors, as is evidence that the pandemic certainly had a significant impact in this area as well. 75% relief will be awarded for those eligible businesses, and this will be through a very simple application process, and applicants must be able to show a trading loss of at least 20% based on their 2019, 20 and 21, 22 accounts. And to ensure affordability, we'll look at businesses with a rateable value of more than 141k. Sorry, we will exclude businesses of more than 141k. But again, as I mentioned earlier on, trying to focus on those small and medium-sized businesses. And as we know, many businesses are facing increased energy and supply chain costs. We talked about that a little earlier on in terms of the impact on us as a local authority. And the CAFS scheme will provide some timely relief from business rates for those particular businesses. So the recommendations from officers, which as the portfolio holder I support, is one that the Cabinet notes the content of the report, but also approves that it would approve the establishment of the COVID-19 Additional Relief Fund. Also that the Cabinet delegates authority for the implementation and monitoring of the fund to the Strategic Director for Growth and Regeneration and the Service Director for Finance. And then finally, that the Cabinet delegates authority to the Strategic Director for Growth and Regeneration and the Service Director for Finance in consultation with myself as the portfolio holder for corporate to vary the eligibility criteria for COVID for the fund and to make further changes to the scheme as required so that we ensure that there's equity and that we achieve the objectives as we've noted earlier on. So I would ask the Cabinet to approve those recommendations, please.
Thank you, members. Is anybody that wants to say anything, add anything? Hands up. No, thanks, Paul. I think it's a really good scheme, just clarifying the situation, the 7 million quid that we've got. Also, the scheme's going to be extended for 6 weeks. Is that right, Paul?
It is indeed. Sorry,
yeah.
I missed that out. You're absolutely right, Leader. 6 weeks.
Yeah. And they'll be able to claim 75% relief and any property of a rateable value of £141,000 or less will be able to apply. And it comes at a timely time, especially when energy and the supply chain costs are increasing. So very comprehensive report and happy to second that. Can we have a show of hands to agree the report? Thank you, members. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item 10, government proposals for additional household support in 2022-2023. Councillor Paul Davis, over to you.
Yep, thanks again, Leader. So this is to set out our proposals as a council to provide support for households, as we just said, in 2022-23, in accordance with the funding and also the associated guidance issued by government. So I'll deal with the energy rebate scheme first. There are two elements to this scheme. I think many people are aware of some of this. There's firstly the mandatory element, which we will receive, we believe, just under 25 million in order to cover what we need to provide within Kirklees, and all households on band A to D are eligible for a £150 payment. We have to make these payments by the 31st of October. There is an automatic refund to eligible households who pay bills on direct debit, and that's approximately 118,000 households. Online application process is applicable for the remaining residents, households rather, and that's approximately 62,000 households who are at the moment, we believe, eligible. So that is quite a significant group, and again, we've discussed this previously. Government guidance does allow us to automatically credit eligible households council tax accounts who haven't applied by the cut-off date, that being the cut-off date that we decide upon. And what we are recommending, officers are recommending, I support this, is mid-August, the 16th of August, in fact, as a cut-off point. This ensures no one eligible will lose out, and we will need to then follow up separately with those households to determine appropriate payment process. I think, again, as you're all aware, leaflets have been sent out with annual council tax bills. Part of that has been encouraging people to take up direct debits, plus publicity on the council website and social media, etc. This is a mandatory payment. Therefore, whatever we get, the government will match. So I referred to 25 million. That's our estimation at the moment. To note as well that all CTR claimants will be entitled to the above £150 rebate, because I think sometimes there is some confusion where council tax reduction claimants are at the moment, but they will be entitled to a £150 rebate, as well as their full CTR entitlement. Also, we have the additional CTR £150 support, which is purely coincidental, which was approved at Budget Council in February, that we can use as well. So that's the mandatory element. The discretionary element, we have just under 1 million within that pot. The proposed criteria is set out in the report. I'm not going to go through that detail. I assume that Cabinet members will have looked through that. And the report is asking for Cabinet approval to the range of criteria set out within the report, and to delegate to the appropriate strategic director in consultation with the portfolio holder with regards to administrating the service, the scheme rather, going forward. This is fixed, and we have to be really careful that we don't overshoot this 1 million. So, you know, we will be doing everything we can to ensure that money is used in the right way and gets to the right people, but we have to be really careful in how we do this. And then finally, something again which most people are aware of in overview is the Household Support Fund. The spring statement, the Chancellor announced a further extension of this, another 500 million, which is in addition to the Household Support Fund that was allocated for October-March of last October to this March. What that looks like for us in Kirklees is approximately 3.7 million as a total fund. And there has been quite a recent change in that in terms of guidance from the government. Well, probably a bit more than guidance, instruction, really, that a third of that 3.7 million must be used for pensioners. So 1.23 million will be ring-fenced for pensioners. That does pose us some challenges, which we'll be working through in terms of, you know, that cohort and how we engage and how we get people to actually apply for that. So that's certainly something we're looking at. And one possible solution that we may look at is that we could share the 1.23 million amongst those of pension age who are in receipt of council tax reduction. That cohort is about 11,500, and that would broadly give them about £106 each. That would be a relatively straightforward way of doing this. It could be credited to the council tax account and refunded it when we're in a position to do so. It could be issued as checks, credits. There's a number of things that we're looking at, but certainly that is an area now that we have to ensure that we meet those requirements for those ring-fenced for that ring-fenced money. The 2.46 million that's left. One of the things that we discussed previously is looking at what support we can give on free school meals during holidays, as we've done previously. We've put forward at the moment that we've already committed to spend at Easter through this scheme in the region of 525,000 to support 17.5 children for that period. However, now that we have a reduced pot, whereas it's not 3.7, obviously it's 2.46. We will need now to look at this further, because clearly if we did that, followed the same approach for the summer, that would really leave us with, well, a very small sum, is 77,500 for working age households. And clearly we want to find a better mechanism of supporting those households. So that's work that will carry on, and part of the report is, as I said, asking for that to be delegated so that we can move that forward. In terms of the recommendations, I won't go through those that talk about noting, but I'll talk about where we're asking Cabinet to approve. So we're asking Cabinet to approve the officer proposal that where no application has been made by the 16th of August, the council tax account of the liable party should be credited with £150. And then also, that's 6.3, also 6.5, to approve the officer proposal that the council adopts the discretionary fund eligibility criteria as set out in paragraph 2.14 of the report, and that there's delegation of authority for implementing and monitoring the fund to the Strategic Director for Corporate Scrutiny and Corporate Scrutiny Commissioner in Public Health and the Service Director Finance. Also in 6.6, to approve, once again, delegated authority to the Strategic Director for Corporate Strategy, Commissioner in Public Health and the Service Director Finance in consultation with myself as corporate portfolio holder to vary the criteria for the discretionary fund as we see fit and on the basis of trying to achieve the maximum impact of that money for our people who are in need across Kirklees. And then finally, 6.8, to approve, again, delegated authority to the Strategic Director for Corporate Strategy, Commissioner in Public Health, and Service Director for Children's Services in consultation with myself as the corporate portfolio holder, and the Learning Aspiration and Communities portfolio holder, together with the Service Director Finance, to direct this household support fund allocation to whether appropriate interventions within the range of the eligibility criteria referred to in 2.18. I fully support, as you would have gathered from what I've said already, the recommendations, and I would ask Cabinet to approve. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Any questions or comments, Councillor John Taylor, before I second?
Thank you, and thank you, Paul, for that comprehensive report. It was just a question about, I've already had local residents asking me about the £150 rebate that they're going to receive and when they're likely to be receiving that, because some of them had it in their head that they were going to get it on the 1st of April. So I just wonder if we've got any clarity on the timescales for that, really, just so I can just go back and, you know, sort of deal with that issue, really.
Yeah,
Yep.
Absolutely no problem. I'll come back to you, John, with that. With the scale, as you can imagine, with the scale of payments, we were never, unfortunately, going to be able to achieve it on day one. But what I'll do is I'll come back to you with the period in which we're looking to address that. Yeah, I'll get back to you as soon as possible on that one. No problem.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I suppose there's two elements to that in the Paul. One is if they're on direct debit, whatever the date is, they'll all get done at the same time. And I've got in the report 16th of August, we're going to try and get it done before. But if they're not on direct debit, then that'll be a different process.
It will. Yeah. But even with the level of payments with indirect, you can imagine with the direct debit, there's a significant amount of work. So, but you're absolutely right, Leader. You know, the real problem is, of course, those who are not on direct debits, and that's the real challenge we face. But I will confirm that to Councillor Taylor, no problem at all. I'll get an overview of what we're doing.
Yeah, no, thanks very much, Paul, and thanks for your question, John. I'd like to second this report, a very comprehensive report. Sure, Councillor Firth, do you want yours now?
Thank you, Chair. Before you second it, it's just a question for Paul. Are we confident, Paul, that all the council tax bills have actually dropped through the door at this current moment?
I would have to double check that, Erica, to be truthful. So I will find out and come back to you with that information. Certainly, I would have thought at this point that would be the case, but I will double check on that.
Thank you. So I'm seconding this. Any more questions or comments? Can I have a show of hands to approve this? Thank you, members. We'll go on to the next item, which is item 11, contract award, fire safety improvement to low-rise residential blocks, district-wide. Now, I'm assuming that the two private items don't relate to this, do they? Which one? Sorry, just. Yeah. So I'm assuming that all members have read item 14? Yes, and then we can make a decision on that. Councillor Nahi, can I ask you to propose this in Cathy's absence?
Thank you, Leader. This report follows on from the report to Cabinet on December 14th, 2021, the compliance review, and outlines outcomes of a recent competitive tender inviting suppliers to undertake fire safety improvements to 865 low-rise blocks across the district. The low-rise tender, we've been carrying out fire safety work since the transfer. The council has been acting positively and has driven the changes to make our tenants safe. There were 1,600 fire risk actions of low and medium risk actions to over 865 blocks. We have dealt with all of the high risk work. If you look at section 2.2 on page 5051, you will see the tender specification and a number of procurement contractors will be assessed via the evaluation of 60% quality, 10% social value, 30% price, and the contractor that scored the winning points was Fortum Solution Limited. If we go on to section 6.154, page 54 is the recommendations, and the recommendations are to consider the report and note the tender evaluation and results. B, approve the appointment of Fortum Solutions Limited to fire safety improvements to low risk residential blocks within Kirklees district. C, the Service Director, Homes and Neighbourhood, to continue to monitor progress against the programme. C, approve the delegation to the Service Director, Homes and Neighbourhood, to sign off final contract sum within a tolerance of 5% of the approved lender sum. The portfolio holder is also very supportive, of the approach to keeping our tenants safe and meeting our obligations detailed against the regulation, and wants us to, the Cabinet to award this contract to deliver the fire safety actions at the Council's low-rise housing blocks. Thank you.
Any questions or comments? No? Can I wash your hands? Thank you. Move on to the next item. Before we move on, I'm assuming members have read the private item 15 on low carbon housing pilot. Yes? Naheed, over to you.
Thank you, Leader. The report sets out the context and background to the low carbon housing project in relation to fuel poverty, energy price rises and reducing the carbon footprint in housing. These are issues which will drive the significant changes in housing design, standards to provide affordable warmth, tackle fuel poverty and to promote public health. The report advises of the proposed outcomes and next steps in developing the project through its design and construction stages, and the behavioural changes in managing and living in innovative and resilient homes. Cabinet is being asked to consider the report and the private appendix containing details of the bid received from organisations bidding to provide specialist design service to design the project and to secure the planning permission. Cabinet is asked to approve the bidder recommended in the private appendix. The reasons and exemptions for this is set out below. And this is a very detailed report, and majority of the information, the background information, is in section 2. So, for example, it outlines how topical it is, the housing needs are dealt with in relation to fuel poverty and climate issues on page 4, and then The project objectives are outlined on page 61, section 2.18, which is to construct 125 homes, a minimum of which 20 will be designed and built to a certified passive house standards, to include a minimum 1 zero carbon house, to achieve a 31% reduction in carbon emissions compared to current Part L building regulations for the remaining homes, incorporate modern methods of construction, and to share learning on costs, constructions and tenants' experience to raise design standards for future housing sites. And page 67 takes us to section 34. Section 34, where it refers to the work carried out had been taken to scrutiny on 15th of March this year, and the committee suggested various things. The report demonstrates that we were listening, so the committee suggested that the council should recognise the linkage between climate change, energy price crisis and fuel poverty. The council should have an ambition for more schemes like this. Officers should consider whether 1 zero carbon house is sufficient to provide sufficient data, etc., etc. So all these considerations were taken on board, and the recommendations are on page 69, and the Cabinet is asked to consider the report and note the outcomes of the tender evaluation as set out in the private appendix. Agree the appointment of ECD Architects Limited, the specialist design consultancy as recommended in the private appendix, to provide architectural planning and development services in designing, costing and obtaining an implementable full planning permission for low carbon and passive house residential developments at the former RM Grills school site, and which shall be capable of implementation as prescribed in the tender exercise documented in the report and private appendices. Thirdly, the delegated authority to the Service Director, Legal Governance, Commissioning in consultation with the Strategic Director for Growth and Regeneration to enter into and execute a contract with ECD Architects Limited, recommended in the Specialist Design Consultancy, to provide design costs planning services to the council in developing the proposals and securing an implementation planning permission. And 5.2, the reasons for these recommendations are to enable the formal conclusion of the tender process, to enable the council to enter into legal contract with the successful bidder. This will enable the process of costing, architectural and planning services, and to secure an implementable planning permission for the development of the low carbon housing pilot project. This will inform the scheme design, projected outcomes, review of costs and subsequent consideration by Cabinet of the next steps in procuring a development contractor, 120 new homes subject to design and layout. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mather. Councillor John Taylor, you got a question?
Are you not seconding it first? No. No, fair enough. So I'm very supportive of this, and this is good to see that the council is, bringing forward proposals to showcase how perhaps we can do things differently. But I do have a worry bead. I was part of the policy committee that looked at pacifist housing. It seems like an awful long time ago. I'm not sure actually how many years ago it was, but it was a number of years ago. One of the concerns, and it is referenced in here because it talks about behavioural changes, and the benefits of pacifist housing is only realised if people live in the house in a very particular way. And my concern has always been with pacifist housing, where we're looking to bring that into our affordable and social housing, is that the very people that we make affordable and social housing available for are the people who tend to be the most vulnerable in our society, and therefore perhaps are not the people who perhaps have lifestyles and that will be able to cope as well with a very restricted way of living. So I do have a concern around this. My other concern around passive standard housing was the costs were significantly higher. So I'm trying to recall, I'm trying to drag from the back of my memory, but it was something like 50% more to build a pacifist house than to build a more traditional style property. So I do have worries. I think it's right that we're trialling this stuff, but I think we need to be very, very careful about how we proceed and not rush to this is the solution to all of our problems, and then find that we've got people who are living in the property in the way they want to live, which means that the benefits that the pacifist housing provides aren't actually being realised. So it's just a concern, and I'd just be interested to know what we're doing to monitor that, really.
Are you on behalf of Cathy? I'll bring Peter in.
Thank you, Councillor Tyler. All of those concerns have been considered, will be continue to be considered. This is a pilot, it's an opportunity to test and learn and acquire skills. Should market want more, and then we'll do that. But at this particular point in time, we're not chasing badges. We're talking about affordable warmth, dealing with cost of living crisis, which is almost at, do you eat or heat, fuel poverty and causes of climate emergency. Yes, it will require different ways of living, but we will build that into the scheme, and we will continue to learn, and the pilot enables us to do that. And together, all of us, across party, we will make sure that whatever formula we come up with in future for affordable homes actually delivers affordable warmth for our vulnerable residents across the district in a manner which suits them and their lifestyle. Thank you.
I've got Naz who might be able to shed some light on this. Naz, are you there?
I am, Leader, yes.
Yeah, hi Naz. Can you? I'm assuming that you've heard Councillor John Taylor's questions and comments. Can you respond, please?
I can indeed, yes. Councillor Taylor's right that the costs, when we first embarked on this journey some 5 years ago, we tendered a site in Newsham to the market, and the tender costs that were returned were some 25% above base cost against a non-passive house type of development. I think the world since then has moved on. We've seen quite a lot of government policy introduced in this area. We've seen the private sector and the house building industry move on this. We've seen a number of off-site manufacturers emerge, and that the technology, as was then, which was relatively unknown and the market untested, that has now grown and matured a little. And I think Councillor Mather, rightly points out we are still learning here, which is why we are embarking on a pilot and asking for at least 20. Clearly, if the market were wanting to offer more, we would accept that according to the affordability ratios around it. And I think Councillor Taylor's question around behavioural shift and lifestyle choices is an incredibly important one. And the learning we want to take from this pilot is split out into 4 distinct parts of the journey. So pre-planning, design and specification issues, and learning from that from the principal designer, learning from the planning and construction phase as well. And then moving into what I would say are the nub of this is that working with the housing register early on, prior to completion of the site, to identify the tenant cohort that would be eligible to live in these homes, and work with them to show them the differences in lifestyle and behaviours around how you use heating, how you use ventilation, a number of different lines. And so that will be a challenge, and that is a risk, but which is in view. And we have mitigations in place to help us address those. We're also, and then the final stage, of course, is once those properties are in occupation, we as the landlord would have to maintain them. So there's a skills agenda there, and that's the learning we want to take in terms of the skills and the economic recovery side of things. We're working alongside the university to help us evaluate this, so that those various stages and the kind of the behavioural issues that we might need to work with to ensure that people have a full understanding of what their home can do and how that home, how the elements and components need to be used and how you live in them. It's simple things, Leader, like we're all used to living in the homes that we live in. We're used to touching the radiator. We're used to having a gas boiler. We're used to opening the windows. These types of homes require us to behave and live in them differently to get the maximum benefit.
Thank you, Peter, and then Viv. Peter?
Yeah, this is very much an experiment, and I think very worthwhile. It's very important that if and how and when we do this, we do it well. There's a huge amount of learning. To actually manage a house which is truly passive requires quite a lot of skill. And I think, therefore, it's important that the tenants are chosen to be, what should we say, to most benefit from the learning package which will be necessary for them to actually use their own houses. And I think we'll need to learn how to teach these skills over a period, and I think we're going to have to gradually improve, and I think that's going to be a biggest part of the exercise. I mean, Naz talks about a 25% increase in cost. I've seen that vary between 25 and 50%. I do think it's worthwhile. I do think the experiment is right, that we attempt to bring this in and to bring our tenants with us. But it's not going to be easy, and I think we should know that from the start, and we should sort of build in this training process as a key part of the whole thing, as important as any other part of the building of the house.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. I've got Viv, and then Councillor David Hall, and then Councillor Paul Davis. Viv?
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, I'm very much interested in this report. I have to say, I wouldn't know how to adjust my behaviour to deal with a passive house. It's a learning curve for all of us, apart from, I assume, the few people in Kirklees who live in that sort of environment. But in view of the climate emergency coming, it's perhaps a lesson that we all will have to learn over time. And I noticed, I was interested in the comments from the ward councillors, because it's always interesting to know what people with local knowledge think. They mention about perhaps vulnerable families not being able to alter their lifestyle. If you're in a position, I don't know what's meant by vulnerability, if it means low income, where you're choosing between eating or heating, I think they'll be damned interested in learning how to adjust their lifestyles. And I absolutely support that. I also note that they would prefer this site to be for private housing, but I cannot escape from, and I miss seeing Cathy in the office, because we're not in the office as much now, where she used to tell me the current housing waiting list. I think last time I looked or heard it was about 17,000, and we have something just over 2,000 vacancies a year. You know, so people might be spending their lifetime on our waiting list. So anything that brings some more houses into social housing available for our residents to meet their needs, I think is absolutely essential. But I think all the comments about making sure that passive housing is used appropriately is absolutely important, and it'd be fascinating to see how this works and what's learnt from it. But I very much support it. Thank you, Chair.
With Councillor David Hall. Dave, over to you.
Thank you, Leader. Speaking as a ward member today, and can I just say thank you to the officers that provided us a briefing last week about this, which is much appreciated. Like the comments that have already been said before, it's not that I object to what's being done here, but I do have concerns as to where we're going to do this experiment. We've been wanting to get some more private housing up around the Windybank estate. And the purpose of that is because, having talked to the teachers at our local schools, one of the problems we have is that a lot of the local children have extremely low aspirations because, unfortunately, that we have high unemployment up in that part. It's a very isolated community. And they don't mix with a lot of children that have other lifestyles. And I think it's very important that we try and build a mixed community up there so that people support each other, and also for the support of our local community facilities and amenities, which aren't very many, I'm afraid. It is a very isolated community. We have one bus that passes through there, and it's 1.5 miles from the nearest town centre. And so I would question really as to whether this is appropriate for the housing people who actually wish to make a contribution to saving carbon by either walking or cycling, because it's probably the last place you would want to live if you were a walker or a cycler. And paragraph 3.8 just does say there, it's been identified as a development site which is suitable for low carbon housing after consideration of several other sites in the council's ownership. So I'd like to question just how we came to that particular conclusion. And on a more general point, we've heard about the added cost to build the houses we're talking about. So I'm presuming that a sum has been set aside for the extra cost of making the certain number of houses eco-compliant or passive house rated or whatever. So how much will that be? And how much carbon or what benefit to the environment will there be for that cost? And is this then the best way of ensuring that that carbon is saved, or that we have the same benefit for the environment? Those are just an open question which I'd like an answer to, please, if possible. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Naz, are you able to answer to the 2 points? One is about the site and suitability, and the other was about the costs.
Yes, Leader. The briefing referred to was that I was the officer who was briefing ward members, Leader. And
can you speak up? Speak up. We just
Sorry, Leader. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I was one of the officers who did the briefing to ward members, and we did rehearse this this question with Councillor Hall and colleagues. So we commissioned some architects to have a look at a number of sites in council ownership that would that are allocated in the local planners for housing, and that we'd identified for council housing purposes. Those designers looked at a number of different factors, planning constraints, site constraints, orientation of homes, and those things on very sketch plans, it has to be said. So we didn't do detailed analyses in terms of actually drawing up schemes that would be able to submit to planning. Against that assessment, Windybank came out as the best site that would lend itself to this type of development, recognising that there are infrastructure issues that we will need to address as part of that planning application. And in terms of costs, etc., Leader, as explained previously, we are at a very early stage of this. We are trying to do the learning around design, specification, and the like around carbon housing, low carbon housing, and passive house standards. So the approvals being sought today is for the appointment of a principal designer, who then will work with the council to look at the ambitions, the site mix of different types of homes, the tenure types, because it doesn't have to be all for social housing. So we have listened to the ward members on the back of the consultation we did last week, and we will consider a mixed tenure development in terms of how the whole thing works out. But as I said, it's very early stages. There'll be a number of different iterations, a number of different designs we'll have to look at, and cost parameters and envelopes. We do know that the passive house may well cost us more, but given that this is a site of scale, that additional cost may not be as high. We've made allowances in the HRA business plan for additional cost. I wouldn't want to, in a public meeting, reveal what that was, Councillor.
Thank you, Naz. Very helpful. I'm pretty clear in terms of what the brief is, and it's good to hear as well that we'll look at the tenure. Councillor Paul Davis.
Thanks, Leader. Yeah, echo, I think, what a number of people have said. I think this is a really exciting pilot. Discussed it in my previous portfolio, as Naz knows. We've talked about this before. I think the learning that we'll get from this will be invaluable. I certainly back up what Viv said, Councillor Kendrick said. Our huge shortage that we have is affordable rented property, and I mean genuinely affordable. I don't mean, I'm not talking about government definitions of affordability. I'm talking about genuinely affordable rented properties with secure tenancies where people can have homes in which they have that sense of community and a sense of belonging and certainly a sense of security going forward. So for me, that is the focus. I'm absolutely, in no way blocking development of privately owned and houses going forward, but that is, that is not the key issue that we face, and many of our citizens face this ability to live in properties where they can afford that. And when we talk about poverty, and we've raised the issues of poverty many times, quite often we don't talk about housing, and clearly housing is a significant contributor to poverty in terms of its costs, etc. So I think the whole pilot in terms of passive house approach in terms of energy costs links into that agenda as well. Whether going forward, the houses are 100% passive house, whether they are something which is near to it or whatever, we will learn from that. But certainly, as Councillor Kendrick said, those individuals who are really struggling will certainly benefit from those lower energy costs. And I know it's a different approach and a different way of looking at things in terms of how you manage those properties, but I agree with Councillor Kendrick. I think people will be highly motivated to do that as well. So I think it's a fantastic initiative. I'm really pleased to see it moving forward. And if I could just take the opportunity as well, Leader, just a little bit of information for Councillor Firth. You'll be pleased to know that, yes, all the council tax bills have gone out.
Thank you, Paul. Very useful comment. Councillor Viv Kendrick, you want to come back in?
I do indeed. I'd like to come back in as someone who grew up on Windybank Estate. I know it very well. And it's interesting, it's alluded to or called very isolated. I think Councillor Taylor or Councillor Simpson in their neck of the woods would think it was well served. It's a mile from Cleckheaton. Not so isolated. It's a 10-minute walk down through the estate to the major bus routes. It's a 5-minute walk up to the estates to the buses that go to Brighouse, Elland into Huddersfield. I don't really think it's that isolated. And as for mixed tenure, it has quite a lot of relatively new private housing built right on the side of it, actually on the fields that I played in as a child. How dare they? But there we are. And as for aspirations, if we want to raise aspirations on the estate and in that area, let's have aspirations about the type of housing that people are offered, the type of good social housing that can be available. So I would heartily support this, and I'm a bit amazed at some of the comments about aspirations. I thought I was going to rule the world. I didn't quite make it, but I had good aspirations. I, like many children from that estate, went to grammar school and did well in exams and all the rest of it, So let's give people a chance and the right housing, please.
Yeah, thanks, Viv. I was actually wondering when I had some of the comments, I thought, is this the same Windybank I know? But I'm glad Viv has said what she has, because obviously she's grown up there and she knows that area better than anybody. I was actually thinking, is there another Windybank that I missed? Eric, you always still my thunder. I was on a roll then. Right, I'll let you come in.
I must follow the Councillor Kendrick's comment, because I was very disappointed when I then read that report, but the actual comments by the teachers. I really was. That after councillors had spoken to teachers that the children had low aspirations. And I think that's a damning indictment for the teachers.
Yes, completely agree. Like I was saying, but I'm glad we're talking about the same Windy Bank estate because obviously we've had personal experience of growing up in that area. But I think, on a serious note, if we don't put good quality housing in places like Windy Bank and the other places, and raise the bar for them kids to actually aspire to something great, then I think we're missing a trick. But I won't going to talk on that. I was just going to talk about the climate emergency because today a lot of World Health Organization experts have released a report saying that in 80 years' time, by 2100 or 200 or whatever, in 8 years' time, the climate's going to get 2 degrees warmer. Now that's quite dangerous actually, because we were hoping that by putting a climate emergency in place and an action plan, that we'd actually at least stabilise that. But despite the fact that whatever we do, it's going to get worse, which is quite alarming. That means that sea levels are going to rise, and freak weather is going to take place, and the planet is more nearer to danger of being completely destroyed. So on the back of that, I think we're doing our little bit in terms of making sure that we put in our resources, we do the little bit that we can to actually make them small differences that hopefully will make a bigger impact. But one thing that we need to actually carry on doing is we need to make sure we work with government to develop a national strategy around how to address climate emergency, a national strategy in terms of providing more passive houses, because in this country we're too used to having the traditional bricks and mortar, slate roof. We don't exploit half the other construction methods that other Scandinavian countries exploit, where their emissions and their heating bills are very, very low. So I think we'll pave the way, and I'm really pleased that this report has come up here. And I can only say that, let's get behind this and let's move and do our little bit. And hopefully we'll become a national demonstrator once we get all this approved. So a quick show of hands to... I have seconded it, yes. That's what I was trying to do, build up to me. So I formally like to second this report. So are we all agree into... no, that's good. It's not because I'm fasting either, Okay, thank you, members. That comes to the end of the meeting. But before you go, I just want to say thank you very much to Peter McBride. It's his last cabinet meeting. Peter's been around since 1974, or before 1974, in the old county council and then in the council. I've personally learnt a lot from him, and I'm sure Peter, you will be missed. Yeah. But I'm sure that you won't disappear. You'll still be needed, and I'll make sure that I keep on getting your advice, and I'll find a role for you. Maybe a climate emergency passive house champion. But anyway, Peter, all the best, and thank you for all your hard work, mate. Thank you. Thank you very much, members. Good night and God bless.